wash out.
All right, yes. So still raining in the UK. I'm stuck indoors. Boy. Anyways, let's finish this up. I don't want to go on for too long. Make it multi-part. Let's read this chapter or part on environmentalism and kind of get to the summary of the article. Okay, environmentalist extremism. In 2006. California passed ep2, the Global Warming Solutions Act, signed by Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Remember him? Yes, he was the gubernator. AB32 empowered the unelected bureaucrats on CARB, California Air Resources Board. Leftism attacks CO2 rather than methane, right? CO2 hampers your economy, puts a huge, like a drag around your neck, big old weight. It's interesting, China has no CO2 regulations, right? So the CARB board who are unelected bureaucrats, decided to regulate CO2 emissions in California with the goal of reducing them to 1919 levels by 2020. Since the passage of AB32, there's been an unceasing flow of follow-on legislation, executive orders, and CARB regulations, to name just a few. In 2008, California Public Utilities Commission, very powerful organization, released their long-term energy efficiency strategic plan, which, among other things, requires all new residential construction to be zero net energy starting in 2020. All new commercial construction to be ZNE, zero net energy, by 2030, and 50% of all commercial buildings to be zero net energy by 2030. SB 350 in 2015 requires California to generate 50% of its electricity from renewables by 2050, with emissions-free nuclear power not eligible, in the italics, for inclusion. Amazing. More recently, Newsom has ordered CARB to implement the phase-out of new gas-powered cars and light trucks by 2045, barely 14 years from now. So that should be 2035, right? I think in the UK, the board it forward their targets to 2030 as well. So I'm sure they will bring this forward as well. He also called on the state legislature to ban fracking. I'm not too disappointed about that. Kind of not a big fan, obviously. These recent executive orders from Newsom are motivated by the series of cataclysmic wildfires that have again claimed millions of acres of forest in California. Wildfires that Newsom alleges were caused by climate change. But the biggest factor by far in causing these wildfires were forest mismanagement. Thanks to environmentalist policies pioneered in California. Easily avoided all this disaster. For decades, California's foresters and timber harvesters knew the forests were dangerously overgrown. Tree density has progressed in the vast Sierra Nevada from a historical and healthy norm of 10 to 50 trees per acre to upward of 300 per acre. Wow. Tree density, some sort of metric. While natural fires were suppressed, so in a healthy ecosystem, you actually kind of want a annual fire, to clear the brush. While natural fires were suppressed with increasing efficiency for many years, healthy forests were nonetheless maintained by logging and controlled burns. But between 1950 and 2020, California's timber industry annual harvest declined from 6 billion board feet, which maintained the equilibrium between natural growth and annual removals, to less than 1.5 billion. Amazing. Wow, 75% reduction. California's powerful environmentalist nonprofits, such as the Sierra Club, oh boy, those guys, and Center for Biological Diversity, use litigation and lobbying not only within California but in federal court and the US Congress to coerce sympathetic judges and legislators to nearly destroy California's timber industry. At the same time as CARB regulations and other onerous permitting obstacles prevented forest thinning or control burns. Disaster, disaster, disaster. When it comes to progressive ideology in general, and California is so, Sierra Club thinks they're tree huggers, so you got to save the trees, right? There's a natural, equilibrium, right? Balance, right? When it comes to progressive ideology in general, California's environmentalists in particular, irony abounds. Let this sink in. California's environmentalists destroyed California's forest. Any attempt to deflect this catastrophe onto climate change is sophistry. Densely packed, tinder dry forests will burn like hell. And that's exactly what happened. It doesn't matter one bit if summers are slightly drier and slightly hotter, they still burn, right? Cripple the housing industry, destroy the suburbs. In all aspects of what Democrats now market as the Green New Deal, California's state government has led the way. This is vividly expressed in the critical aerial zoning for high-density housing. Based on the largely unchallenged assumption that suburban sprawl results in higher per capita greenhouse gases, by cramming nearly all new home constructions into the footprint of existing cities, the price of entitled real estate in California has become artificially inflated. But that's just the beginning of the ordeal facing developers. Along with higher priced land, home builders have to contend with costly building codes, such as requiring zero net energy homes, excessive fees, and uncertain prolonged delays in gaining approval to begin construction. The result of California's restrictive policies is that it has become impossible for unsubsidized developers to build and sell affordable homes. So the housing crisis or lack of affordability is a direct result of bureaucratic interference. A key piece of restrictive legislation is SB 375, enacted in 2008, which ties transportation funding to cities and counties adopting higher density residential zoning. A more recent example of the relentless drive towards higher density is SB 743 passed in 2013, but just now being implemented by CARB. This new law requires every new housing development to assess the likely vehicle miles traveled by the residents per year. And if that amount is considered excessive, well, the builders must pay extra fees or in some way mitigate for this. Needless to say, this renders the price of homes even more unaffordable. All these laws being passed in California are designed to increase the density of housing, as well as to mandate home builders move to multi-family dwellings, with a percentage of them designated for low-income renters. Democratic lawmakers have repeatedly introduced bills that will supersede local control over zoning to force, for example, fourplex projects to be approved in neighborhoods that currently are for single-family homes. Wow. Why mix that up with a suburban family kind of residential complex? Suburbs are supposed to be for the families, right? Yeah. The entire regulatory ecosystem that has been created not only denies middle-income Californians the ability to purchase homes, or long-standing homeowners the right to preserve the ambience, there we go, that's key, of their neighborhoods. It also enriches a corrupt class of developers whose business model relies on tax credits and public subsidies to build housing for low-income families and the homeless at a statewide average cost that has now eclipsed $500,000 per apartment unit. Wow. At this extraordinary per unit cost, nothing is sold, but the tax subsidized developers and investors do very well. That's why BlackRock is so predominant in California and Los Angeles in particular, kind of pricing out the mom and pop residential investor who sometimes back in the day used to purchase little apartment complexes, duplexes, quadplexes, triplexes, etc. as for some residual secondary income. They are being priced out. And so the more money that these developers make, the more political influence they have. This is the model for housing that California is exporting to the rest of the United States. Oh, that's terrible. Their goal is to eliminate the single-family dwelling altogether. Wow. While they justify by characterizing freestanding homes as ecologically unsustainable and disproportionately allocated to people with unwarranted privilege based on the color of their skin. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, go to California and look at the housing they are building. These crappy apartments dumped in the middle of these what were basically single family middle class homes and stuff, right? It's really changing the whole landscape of the social makeup. Through all of these examples of progressive feudalism that California has perfected, even as they export them to the rest of America, the same themes apply. Reduce consumption, ration energy and water, ration the supply of available land for construction, reduce the privileged middle class. In this case, by transforming the suburbs into high-density neighborhoods with abundant subsidized housing. And who's entering those subsidized housing, right? Justify all of it in the name of saving the planet and social justice. Make basic necessities unaffordable. The consequence of California's excessive environmentalist-inspired policies is to make the state unaffordable. So expensive in California. Everything costs you double, almost. It comes from a fundamental worldview that California uses all of its cultural influence to reinforce in America and across the globe. Austerity is necessary to save the planet. This goes all the way back to Jerry Brown's era of limits philosophy, which he promoted during his first term as governor back in the 70s. Holy moly. These guys have been at it for decades, right? The basic necessities of life, housing, transportation, energy, and water cost more in California than anywhere else in America. This is because of artificially imposed scarcity, a choice that is entirely avoidable, along with making it impossible to profitably build affordable market housing. California no longer makes significant public investments in energy, water, or transportation infrastructure, preferring instead to redirect available funds to public employee pay and benefits. They justify this by claiming they are protecting the environment, but the real winners are the special interests. The fully co-opted unionized public sector is a primary beneficiary of a hyper-regulated state where everything costs more than it should. Stratospheric home values translate directly into higher property tax receipts. Elevated utility and telco prices to the consumer enable higher returns from the hidden taxes and fees embedded in the monthly billings. Public employee pension funds benefit when their real estate portfolios soar in value. Also benefiting from artificial scarcity are landowners, established corporations, public utilities, and investment funds, all of which realize higher profits and returns when competitors are shut out, and captive consumers bid up prices on limited supplies. Public utilities offer a particularly pernicious example of how artificial scarcity elevates profit. See De Beers and the Diamonds, right? Classic example. The profits these regulated utilities can earn are limited to a percentage of their revenues. That's correct. But when expensive renewable energy is delivered on this cost plus basis to the consumer, they can sell the same or even fewer kilowatt hours for far more revenue. Since they are allocated a fixed percentage of their revenue for profit, higher revenue always means higher profits. This philosophy of limits and austerity pioneered in California and pushed relentlessly into the culture is as dangerous to the prospects of ordinary Americans in the rest of the country as the actual policies enacted by California's politicians. The blessings of capitalism, where competitive development and innovation yield ongoing and broadly distributed prosperity, are assigned no credibility in California. They are discredited as harming the planet and inherently racist. In a stunning inversion of logic, promulgated as much by high-tech billionaires as by the zealous millennials emerging from California's K-12, which is kindergarten to year 12, system of public school indoctrination, which brings us to public education itself. How am I doing on time? 13 minutes, okay. Sorry, taking a swig of tea. Oh yeah. Destroy public education. There's one area where California's influence is felt every election cycle in the rest of the United States, and it comes courtesy of California's unionized public education system. Unionized public education. Ugh, gross. California's public employee unions collect and spend over $900 million per year, mostly from member dues. Blimey. More than half that, nearly $500 million per year, comes from public education unions, chief among them California's Teachers Association. The leadership of these unions are willing to spend hundreds of millions every election cycle to support Democratic candidates and causes. Everywhere, with California cities and counties and school boards among almost universally dominated by California's Teachers Association approved Democrats, along with both houses of the state legislature and the higher state elected offices. The teachers unions have money to burn in the rest of the United States. Boom. And that's exactly what they do, sending out millions to swing close elections to the US Senate, House of Representatives, and state offices across the country. Holy moly. Where there's money for politics, there's a political clout to completely dominate California's school system. Thanks to the influence of the teachers' union, state laws are slowly squeezing charter schools out of existence. Wow. With a rising assault on homeschoolers, only deferred by the COVID-19 school shutdowns. Thanks to the teachers' unions in California, the work rules that prevent teacher accountability and school accountability are already well established law. Wow. Work rules that prevent teacher accountability. Wow. Attempting to fire a teacher or retain the best teachers in layoffs, or even to extend the period of time before a teacher gains tenure and has a job for life, all are all rendered nearly impossible in California. The way teachers' unions have had the power to affect the curriculum of California's public schools are well documented, most notably the recent mandate to implement gender studies, instruction across all age groups that borders on pornographic. Wow. Still pending the mandate to require ethnic studies. Courses as a prerequisite for high school graduation. Something that would have already become law except the various stakeholders haven't yet agreed on which victimized groups would occupy which positions on the victim hierarchy. Wow, wow, wow. A lot of propaganda being fed into your kids' brains right there. In general, California's teachers' unions have committed public schools to pedagogy. Pedagogy? I've never heard or read that word before. Yeah. Ooh, pedagogy. Ooh, I think it's a bad word. That indoctrinates students with their own political ideology. America is a flawed nation founded on racism. White men are oppressors. Capitalism is inherently exploitative. Socialism is the only path to social justice and environmental health. Socialism, the only answer, apparently. The impact of the teachers' unions to reinforce and catalyze California's socialist vision for America and the world cannot be overstated. Year after year, their money pours over the Sierra Nevada to decisively influence countless political races in the rest of the nation. The National Teachers Union that lobby for similar curricula around America are dominated by the California leadership and California's revenues, right? For over a generation, students thoroughly steeped in socialist ideology have graduated from California's school system. As graduates of this indoctrination, they have spread into every other state, from the streets of Portland and Seattle to the precincts of Allegheny County. They staff HR departments and activist nonprofits. They are code warriors and social media influencers. The teachers' unions of California have done their job well. Their proteges are everywhere. Foment identity group attention. Yeah. Health and safety mandates. The COVID-19 lockdowns may have grabbed the headlines, but California has been going off the deep end in pursuit of health and safety for decades. A good example is Prop 65, the Safe Drinking Water Act and Toxic Enforcement Act, sold to voters in 1986. This is the California law responsible for cancer warning signs, so ubiquitous that most Californians know it's better just to ignore them. In bars and restaurants, on playground equipment, shoes, umbrellas, and golf club covers, and even around Disneyland, consumers are warned that a product served on the premises, even the place itself, is known to the state of California to cause cancer, reproductive harm. Blimey. Playground equipment, umbrellas. While most Californians have gotten used to these warning labels, they are no laughing matter. They expose small businesses to ruinous lawsuits. Prop 65 is often out of step with a scientific consensus because it draws from a reference list of nearly 1,000 chemicals chosen if, according to state regulators, that they could cause cancer. One excess case of cancer in 100,000 individuals exposed to the chemical over a 70-year lifetime. Yeah, that's not. There's a threshold limit that a chemical compound element must reach to be actual danger, right? And that is not 1 in 100,000 over a 70-year lifetime. That is ridiculous. But with a criteria like that, everything causes cancer. Exactly. Like so many regulations, the biggest victims of Prop 65 are small businesses. This deputizes private trial lawyers to search for evidence of non-compliance. Small businesses, which generally don't have the resources to fight costly legal battles, are often compelled to settle. Because the penalties for failure to warn are so steep, businesses paid $35 million in settlements in 2018, with more than 3/4 of this going to attorney fees. Some lawyers who specialize in this area take home more than $1 million in fees per year. Holy moly. This federal government is the only backstop against a law so broad that it applies to products produced anywhere in the world and that are sold in California. In August 2019, the US Environmental Protection Agency took the unprecedented step of issuing guidance stating it won't approve of Prop 65 false labeling on the weed killer Roundup. Wait, the only thing that actually probably does cause cancer is not going to get the label because the science doesn't support it. EPA didn't mince words. It is irresponsible to require labels on products that are inaccurate when EPA knows the product does not pose a cancer risk, said EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler. We will not allow California's flawed program to dictate federal policy. This federal action against Prop 65 came on the heels of long-sought exemption for coffee in June. This about-face was the result of outrage from coffee makers, drinkers, and even scientists who demonstrated that coffee was not a cancer risk. Another federal agency, the Food and Drug Administration, threatened to step in if the state went ahead with Prop 65. I wonder if they were successful with the labels for coffee. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb explained that these could mislead consumers to believe that drinking coffee could be dangerous to their health when it actually could provide health benefits. Imagine the White House in the hands of someone more favorably disposed to California's global ambitions. Kamala Harris. The battle for California is the battle for America. But again, it's not just coffee or weed killer. California's long reach is far more ambitious. What we drive, where we live, and how much we pay for basic necessities. All of these questions are destined to be answered with far more restrictions, making everything far more costly for you. If California's policies are successfully exported to the rest of the United States. Despite covering a lot of ground in this discussion, how California is transforming itself and the rest of the nation in the process, there are more examples of equal significance left unexamined. California's proposed wealth tax. Ooh, I think this came into play with Biden just a few weeks ago, right? Borrows from proposals from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and returns the favor by creating a model for states and possibly even the federal government to emulate. Yes, here we go. There's also California's minimum wage laws, set to drive the statewide minimum wage to the highest in the nation. California's extraordinary hostility to small businesses and California's punitive rates of taxation, high tax, small businesses, be damned, so much regulation there, right? To counter California's enacting laws and regulations that corporations will simply adopt for the entire global product line or HR manual, the political and cultural values that dominate California must be challenged. Sadly, many corporations have decided it is more cost-effective for them simply to adopt these practices than to bother fighting them. In California, most corporations have realized their commercial aspirations are actually better served by adhering to the excessive restrictions imposed by California because it creates artificial scarcity which drives up prices. It creates captive markets, purchasing mandated products, and it throws up barriers to innovative competitors lacking the financial resilience to comply. Yeah, it's all well and good for a little while, but then, economic forces ultimately take over in the end after the collapse, right? For these reasons, out-of-state interests must recognize California for what it is, a plutocracy that has put its own interests before the interests of its residents. This power of this plutocracy is almost indescribable and extends well beyond their alliance with environmentalist non-profits and public sector unions. California's plutocrats not only have personal wealth measured in tens of billions, but they control the most powerful corporations on Earth. These corporations have monopoly power over America's online communications and search platforms. And equally, if not more significant, their companies are at the epicenter of a high-tech ecosystem capable of developing rapidly deploying advanced autonomous weapons systems. In a low-intensity civil war, California, allied with other blue states, might easily hold its own. The battle for America is the battle for the future of the world. California's plutocrats don't just have their eye on America. They want to conquer the world. For them, progressive feudalism is the political economy of the future, flipneck, enabling them to preside over a reduction in the quality of Western lifestyles and individual freedom, and the leveling of wealth around the world, while exponentially increasing their own wealth and power. Once they've taken over the United States, they may face a reckoning with the progressive electorate and militant cadres that were their enablers on the ground. But it wouldn't last long. By then, the technology-driven police state will be perfected, with limitless access to robots, slap drones, nanobots, cyberware, and precision pathogens. Boom. Offering effortless control of even the most restive populations. For these reasons, overcoming the progressive feudalists now by changing the sentiment of California's electorate is not only preferable to violence, it has higher probability of success. Most Californians have figured out that something is wrong, but they have been brainwashed into fearing the alternatives. They fear meritocracy, they fear capitalism, they fear racism, they fear climate change. They have slowly become accustomed to what is becoming tyranny, and they believe material poverty is necessary to save the planet and atone for racism. And all these areas, the people who could have offered common sense solutions have been censored and disparaged. But the progressive feudalists have one fatal weakness: they are wrong. The fundamental premise they use to justify their actions are flawed. Of course it is, yeah. Meritocracy is the only way free people can create an efficient, prosperous, opportunity-filled society. Without it, nobody has any incentive to innovate or work hard. The capable and hardworking become cynical and resentful, while the incompetent, then the indolent, or maybe that's supposed to be insolent, maybe it's indolent. No, they don't have to step up because they can live for free. Capitalism is not dangerous. It is the engine of progress. It has been conflated with corporate monopolies and financial speculators. Yeah, completely different. What a free nation does is use thoughtful regulations to amputate the gangrenous appendages of capitalist corruption. That is key, the corruption of the capitalist market, right? The capital market. The predators and the gamblers, leaving the pure and competitive heart of capitalist competition to thrive. Yeah, it just needs a little pruning every now and again, right? Racism is an odious fact of history in all nations and cultures, but the facts today in California tell a very different story. Racism, such as it is institutionalized to favor non-whites in every aspect of society, hiring, admissions, and promotions. To the extent racial disparities exist in academic group achievement, it is the result of schools that have been destroyed by the teachers' union monopoly, which has been proven to disproportionately damage schools in low-income areas, and as courageous conservatives in the Black and Latino communities are asserting with increasing confidence, building wealth and income in these communities require internal cultural change. Stay married, work hard, stay in school, study marketable skills, reject drugs and alcohol and gangs. There are ample examples of communities in the United States that have overcome discrimination or possible discrimination and have thrived. It can be done. Take responsibility. Finally, climate change, the trump card of the collectivists, played by progressive feudalists, whenever they decide it's time to end the debate and get on with their agenda. But everything the environmental extremists have done in recent years has caused harm. Suburban expansion doesn't stop climate change; it just makes housing unaffordable. Forest preservation doesn't preserve forests; it just turns them into tinderboxes that are periodically obliterated by fire. Natural gas is affordable and clean, and has already allowed Americans to lower the ratio of CO2 emissions to energy consumption to the lowest of all industrialized nations. Are the Chinese and Indians going to lower their emissions? Question. Because if they don't, so what if Americans do? What about nuclear power? Why is the renewables lobby shutting down Diablo Canyon? These are the messages that must be taken to California's voters without apology or equivocation. Expand suburbs along the freeway corridors into the vast rangeland of California. Build new reservoirs and restore the aqueducts. Build desalination plants up and down the California coast and keep Diablo Canyon open. Thin the forests, restore the timber industry, and build biomass power plants to turn the trimmings into clean electricity. Instead of squandering billions on a bullet train, widen the roads with smart lanes for high-speed, high-tech cars. Boom. Drill for natural gas in the Monterey Shale. Mine lithium in the Mojave Desert. Deregulate so builders and business owners can spend their time, talents, and money on productive work instead of permits and fees. And launch a frontal assault on the teachers' union by enacting a school choice with vouchers parents can redeem wherever they want. This is a contract with California that would entice everyone. This is the enlightened, empowering capitalism that delivers the broad prosperity and freedom that progressive feudalism promises but cannot possibly deliver. This is the agenda that will enable voters in California to understand that competitive abundance is a morally preferable choice. California can be affordable again without compromising environmentalist values. California can deliver opportunity to everyone again, no matter who they are or where they came from. Americans who want to prevent the Californication of America must step up, dollar for dollar, to counter the spending of California's public sector unions and resident billionaires. California's seething population searching for answers must realize the premises used to justify their misery rely on convenient illusions conjured by special interests for their own gain. But the battle must be fought. Somebody has to tell them. What is at stake in California is not just for California. It is the future of America. It is the future of the world. Boom. Amazing piece, right? Nothing I disagree with, and this is the first time reading it. I never proofread it or nothing, so all the solutions he provided are all very logical. All the problems presented are all created by the unions and the politicians with their regulations, unfortunately. But it can be saved. California can be saved, so it's important that it is saved, right? So spread this around, especially to people who live in California. As California goes, America goes, and so does the Western world. So important that this article is shared and understood, right? You know, it's going to be a hard fight because, like a lot of the school kids coming out, these millennials are kind of brainwashed, right? So, kind of have to do some unfucking of their brains. Sorry for swearing, but it's kind of true, right? All right, people. Yeah, ending it here. Lovely. Cheers. Bye.